Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give it a minute so we can let others who are getting ready to join us join in. If you haven't already, you might want to select the link that's provided in the video description to access the prompt and passage we'll be using today. We'll just give it a minute. If you're just joining in, we're just giving it a minute to make sure everybody has time to get logged in here. If you are already joining us and you have a second, if you want to go ahead and try to access the prompt and passage that's in the link in the video description. We'll be working with that prompt and passage today, and it's our last time with that particular passage, the Adams passage. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. My name's Dawn Knight. I'm an English teacher in Westfield, Indiana. Welcome back for those of you who joined in yesterday, and welcome to anyone who didn't have a chance to join us yesterday. I hope you all have been staying active. I know that right now there's a lot of, trying to get outside and stay active. I think we've been exhausting my dog because he's been going on more walks than he's ever been. So this is Barley looking very tuckered out after our last walk. Okay, so let's get started. If you didn't join us last time, I just want to go over briefly what our AP exam practice was. So the prompt is to write an essay that analyzes the rhetorical devices or choices that Abigail Adams makes to convey her argument about the value of experience. So your exam practice was to write one paragraph analyzing how she uses comparison to appeal to her son, conveying her argument about the value of experiencing the challenges of travel abroad. Use both the river metaphor and the Cicero allusion as specific evidence. Don't forget to analyze how her knowledge of her audience helps her convey her message. Remember to consider the rhetorical situation in your analysis. What does the writer Abigail Adams know about her audience, her son John Quincy Adams, and how does that play a role in the effectiveness of the use of comparison? So even if you weren't in our lesson yesterday, you should be able to get something out of going through this warm up today to see how the comparisons in particular are analyzed. So here's an example that while it correctly interprets the comparisons, it doesn't really do a good job of putting them in the context of the rhetorical situation to analyze how that might have impacted the audience. So let's look at this example. Abigail Adams uses comparison to convey her message to her son. In the third paragraph, she introduces two metaphors to compare travelers, like her son, to a river that increases its stream the further it flows from its source, and to springs that improve their qualities as they pass along. So if he travels, he will grow as a person. The message of both of these is clear. Abigail Adams believes her son should take advantage of the opportunity for personal growth that the experience traveling abroad will bring. Abigail Adams also alludes to Cicero. She reminds her son that Cicero shone as a distinguished orator because he had been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Varus, and Mark Antony. She believes that he too can become inspired by facing challenges. Abigail Adams uses metaphors to convey her message that John Quincy Adams should take advantage of the opportunities offered him in France. Okay, so it does get at the heart of what the metaphor is and how it applies to her son, but it doesn't really take in the full context or how that might have impacted him. So let's look at a better example. And this time you can see in the colored highlights how it hits on much more of the rhetorical situation. Abigail Adams uses comparison to convey her message that her son should meet the challenges of traveling abroad and engage in the experience in order to be a better citizen and statesman. In the third paragraph, she introduces two metaphors to compare travelers like her son to a river that increases its stream the further it flows from its source, and to springs that improve their qualities as they pass along. The message of both of these is clear. Abigail Adams believes her son should take advantage of the opportunity for personal growth that the experience traveling abroad will bring. As a mother, she appeals to his sense of guilt here, reminding him of the superior advantages she has given him, and that his improvement should reflect those advantages. If, like the river and stream, travel leads to growth, he should take advantage of that opportunity. In her allusion, Adams reminds her son that Cicero shone as a distinguished orator because he had been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Verres, and Mark Antony. This would surely appeal to her son's sense of patriotism and duty, especially as he is an aspiring diplomat who, like Cicero, was an eyewitness to tyranny, who would have been moved by Cicero's plight. She appeals to his common sense as well, explaining that difficult situations like the one faced by Cicero wake into life the character of the hero and the statesman. So, facing a challenge like the one he was facing abroad would make him not only a better person, but a better statesman as well. Abigail Adams's use of comparisons effectively conveyed her message that John Quincy Adams should take advantage of the opportunities offered him in France. Okay, so this time we see that connection to the rhetorical situation. It's not just the message and how the metaphors relate to the message, but how what the writer knows about her audience might impact that influence. All right, so I want to give you just a couple of minutes to look at your own. We're going to take 2.5 minutes here, and I want you to think about that rhetorical situation. You see our colored highlights at the top there. Where do you have those specific elements in yours? So take a look at it. Let's do 2.5 minutes. And if you're just joining us, you can read through the passage and just kind of think about those metaphors and comparisons. They're in the third and fourth paragraphs. Just highlight or label where you included different elements of the rhetorical situation. We'll do about 30 more seconds. Okay, so what did you do well and where do you need to improve based on those highlighted sections? Did you have purpose and message? Did you have audience? Did you have some about the writer, about Abigail Adams and her relationship to her audience, her son? So, where do you need a little bit more? The context we talked about. So, it's 1780, post Revolutionary War. So, maybe just jot down those areas that you feel like need improvement. I'm just going to give you, we'll just do 1 minute for this since you already highlighted or less. Just jot down which of those bullet points you feel like you need to improve. Okay, so let's move on with today's lesson. So we are still working on, if you've been tuning in, you know we've been kind of focusing on skills featured in Unit 8, which addresses the more nuanced reading and understanding of the rhetorical situation. Our goal throughout this unit has been to enhance your understanding of the sophistication row of the analytical rubric. We spent several days on this lesson using the Abigail Adams prompt. It's a pre-20th century prompt, and I know you're probably excited to know that today's the last day that we're going to be using this particular prompt. But for the rhetorical analysis, it's really important to try to delve deeper into, especially a pre-20th century text. It's a little more difficult, and hopefully throughout the last several lessons, you've gotten a chance to really understand that rhetorical situation because we've continued to use this prompt. Um, but the goal today is to bring this unit together, all of Unit 8 together, by looking at a high scoring sample of a complete response to this exact prompt. And just a reminder that we're looking on that right-hand side of the rubric where we're looking for, given the rhetorical situation, trying to explain the significance or relevance of the writer's choices. Okay, so a couple of our key takeaways today, looking at writers' choices regarding syntax and diction and how those influence how the writer is perceived by an audience and may influence the degree to which an audience accepts an argument. So we're looking at analyzing the rhetoric. And because audiences are unique and dynamic, writers must consider the perspectives, contexts, and needs of the intended audience when making choices of evidence, organization, and language. Again, we're analyzing those choices that Abigail Adams makes. So some of you have been tuning in and you've read this prompt before. For those of you just joining us, I do want to make sure that you have a chance to read the passage so that you're on the same page as the rest of us when we go through this student sample. So I do want to give you 3 minutes to read through it. Even if you've been tuning in and you've read the prompt, it's a great idea to go ahead and read it again because we're going to be analyzing some specific elements of this passage that the student uses, and we want to make sure that everybody knows the passage that we're talking about. So we're going to take 3 minutes to read back through, and then we'll look at the student sample. Okay, let's get started. We have about a minute and a half to go. We have about 30 seconds. Okay, so let's take a look. Today, we're looking at a high scoring sample. We're going to identify how the student sample explains the significance and relevance of the writer's rhetorical choices given the rhetorical situation, including the sophisticated analysis of comparison and how they use diction and syntax. Okay, so we're looking at the student sample from the 2014 exam. We're looking as we look at this sample for the rhetorical situation and syntax and diction. And syntax is just the way sentences are put together, and diction is word choice. And I know that that was from a previous lesson that you did with Mrs. Velitis, but just want to make sure we're all together. Okay, so we're going to read the first half of the student sample together. You'll notice I have the rhetorical situation at the top again, still color coded as we've been using. So as you see these highlights as we read through, you'll see where they're analyzing these particular elements of the rhetorical situation. In 1780, 8 years before the ratification of the Constitution, Abigail Adams wrote to her son, the future president of the United States, while he was traveling overseas with his father, who was a US diplomat at the time before he was elected president. Unaware that her son would become president, she writes to convince her son of travel and of diligence. Okay, so we're going to stop there for a second. Just in those couple of sentences, we see context in green that it's 1780. We see the exigence, why Abigail Adams wrote, because he's traveling overseas with his father and she sees he's not doing everything he should be doing. And then finally, we see purpose. She's trying to convince him of why he should travel and have diligence in that travel. Adams employs tone, a concerned uh, motherly tone, historical allusions, qualified flattery, patriotic appeals, and lists to impart the importance of maximizing on natural talent by applying oneself. Okay, so here we have a little bit about her, that she's concerned and that obviously she's motherly. And then we have the message. She wants him to apply himself more in this experience. Adams encourages her son to be diligent by appealing to his affection for her. She opens the letter with, "My dear son," to establish that she does not intend to scold him, but to guide him. She next establishes that her primary concern is his safety, appealing to his emotions so that he will be receptive to her advice, complimenting his language skills, qualifying her compliment by asserting his need to improve. Okay, so again, the writer is trying to guide him. His safety is her concern. So again, we have elements of Abigail Adams here, that she's appealing to his emotions. So we have something about her son, that he has language skills, but that those language skills need to be improved. So again, analysis with the full rhetorical situation here. Her reference to a discussion with an author in line 16 legitimizes her argument as a form of employing the older and wiser claim. Her reference to the author's metaphor in line 17 intends to assure her son of the importance of the trip on which she has encouraged him to embark. All right, so here we have that she's older and wiser. You should listen to me. I'm your mother and I'm older and wiser. And the importance of the trip is part of the message. Um, she again flatters him um, in line 26 by emphasizing his vast natural talent, but again qualifies the assertion by highlighting the necessity of employing his God given gifts by showing effort. So you see a combination of here of the audience that he's naturally talented, and you see that there's this shared belief in God and that she believes these gifts have been given to him, but also that he needs to show more effort. She instills a sense of guilt in him for not capitalizing on his blessings in hopes that he will become more diligent and mature. So this goes beyond the message itself and into the purpose of that. Why should he involve himself and engage himself more? Okay, so now I want you to take a few minutes to do what we just did over the second half. So you're going to read it to yourself. And as you do, you're going to look for those the rhetorical situation and how this student used the rhetorical situation in their analysis of this prompt. So you can either annotate in a copy that you opened or printed, or just jot down notes on a separate sheet of paper. But I'm going to give you about 3.5 minutes to do this. Okay, let's get started. We have about 2 minutes to go. About 1 more minute. Okay, so let's take a look. We're not going to read back through this again since you just read through it, but I do want to show you my highlights. I think doing the color coding really kind of shows how this student involved the entire rhetorical situation. I added the syntax and diction in purple just to give you a sense of that as well. But you'll notice at the top, she talks about the sense of patriotism. So we have that audience. She calls him a genius and says that it flatters, while the historical allusion provides examples. So we have the audience there again. She also gets back the student. I don't know why I'm saying she. I have no idea. The student also instills in her son a sense of responsibility. So the student's talking about purpose here and why Abigail Adams is writing this particular piece, the letter. The habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. So there's part of the message here that he should go through these difficult situations in life. And back to context. The present difficulties, the American Revolution, Great Britain. And so all of this appeals to a sense of patriotism in the audience. So notice how this particular student looked at not just what the message was and not just what the choices were, but what those meant in the rhetorical situation and how they worked together to convey the message. I do want to point out in purple there by listing war, tyranny, and desolation. So we have the idea that there's a list and that these are specific, there's specific word choice here involved in order to encourage the son to conduct his life, aiding the country. So why that word choice was important and how it might impact her son. At the bottom of that first column, so that the sun or so that he can change the shape of the future of the nation. So again, it goes beyond my message is that you need to do something while you're in France and why that's significant or important, the larger purpose of that, why he should get involved in that situation. And then on the right hand side, um, if you look at the bottom, it says a bright future for her beloved homeland. So again, we have that larger purpose. It goes beyond make sure that you're involved in this trip to France. Okay, so I want to show you the AP commentary over this student sample. This essay effectively analyzes the rhetorical strategies Adams uses to advise her son, beginning with a review of the historical context. Unaware that her son would become president, she writes to convince her son of travel and of diligence. The writer connects the strategies to Adams' purpose, which is described in detail. Adams employs a concerned maternal tone, historical allusions, qualified flattery, patriotic appeals, and lists to impart the importance of maximizing on natural talent by applying oneself. The essay demonstrates a controlled use of language to develop the argument, explaining not simply that Adams appeals to her son's emotions, but that she instills a sense of guilt and invokes a sense of patriotism to call her son to action. The essay ends with another reference to the historical context and a larger view of Adam's purpose, the desperate hope that by raising him well, she could ensure a bright future for her beloved homeland. Okay, so a quick debrief. We focused on syntax, diction, and other rhetorical choices that writers must consider the perspectives and contexts and needs of the audience. But for the last 5 lessons, we used this Abigail Adams prompt and looked at the rhetorical situation, syntax and diction, how arguments demonstrate understanding of an audience's beliefs, values, or needs, appeals to ethos, pathos, and logos, sophisticated use of analogies, and then we just looked at the high scoring sample to put it all together. So hopefully you see how all of those pieces that we've been doing over the last few lessons all came together. So in other words, we delved deeper into our analysis of a pre-20th century text, and we looked at how that student analyzed those choices in the essay. All right, so our exam practice today, and then we are done with this Abigail Adams prompt, and we're moving on to argument in our lesson starting tomorrow. We'll be in Unit 9. We'll be doing a more modern argument prompt. So today's AP exam practice is a multiple choice question. It's still about looking at how a writer's use of analogy reflects what they know about their audience. You can access the PDF of this practice question and the link below the video description. So if you don't get a chance to read through it right now all at once, obviously with that very little time. So you can access this in the video description and take some time to do that. And then we'll talk about it at the beginning of our lesson tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll join again as we start Unit 9 tomorrow. Be sure to complete the practice question and we'll review it then. All right, thanks. Bye.